Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. The nation is celebrating Pakistan Day today with renewed commitment to work hard for the progress and stability of the country. The day dawned with a 31-gun salute in the federal capital and a 21-gun salute in provincial capitals. On this day in 1940, Muslims of the subcontinent passed the historic Lahore Resolution, which led to the creation of Pakistan. A change of guard ceremony was held at the mausoleum of the inceptor of the ideology of Pakistan, Allama Iqbal, in Lahore. In their messages, President Dr. Arif and Prime Minister Imran Khan expressed solidarity with the oppressed people of Indian-occupied Kashmir. United States President Joe Biden has expressed his resolve to strengthen partnership with Pakistan. In a letter, Biden facilitated President Arif and the entire nation on Pakistan Day. Biden said Washington will continue to cooperate with Islamabad for the establishment of peace in Afghanistan. Earlier, in a phone call with Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin lauded Pakistan's continued support for the Afghan peace process. In the U.S., 10 people, including a police officer, have been killed in a shooting at a supermarket in Boulder City of western Colorado State. Police say they have arrested the suspect gunman who got injured in the encounter. The bloodshed marks the second mass shootings in the U.S. in a week following gun violence in Atlanta that left 8 people dead. China has summoned the European Union ambassador to protest against sanctions over alleged human rights abuses. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said Beijing's communicated its reservations to Nicolas Chapuis. Beijing said the bloc should recognize the seriousness of its error and correct it to prevent further damage to ties with China. Israelis are voting in the 4th general election in 2 years after the ruling coalition collapsed in December. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a tough vote, being embroiled in several corruption trials. Meanwhile, the personal information of all voters was leaked by anonymous hackers a day before the election. In Brazil, over 1,300 more people have died from coronavirus overnight, raising the death toll to over 295,000. In Pakistan, 72 people lost their lives to the virus, while nearly 3,300 tested positive overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed 2.7 million lives and infected 123 million people so far. And in the National Basketball Association, the Utah Jazz have dominated the Chicago Bulls 95-120. Donovan Mitchell scored 30 points with 6 rebounds and 6 assists to lead Jazz to victory. In another encounter, Houston Rockets beat Toronto Raptors 117-99. Well, these were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. The nation is celebrating Pakistan Day today with renewed commitment to work hard for the progress and stability of the country. On this day in 1940, Muslims of the subcontinent passed the historic Lahore Resolution, which led to the creation of Pakistan. The day dawned with a 31-gun salute in the federal capital and a 21-gun salute in provincial capitals. A change of guard ceremony was held at the mausoleum of the inceptor of the ideology of Pakistan, Allama Iqbal, in Lahore. In their messages, President Dr. Arif urged the nation to remember the Kashmiris who are being subjected to the worst form of repression and state-sponsored terrorism. Prime Minister Imran Khan also expressed solidarity with the innocent people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's embassies around the world are also celebrating Pakistan's National Day. Ankara's landmark buildings decorated with Pakistan's national flag. However, due to downpours in the capital city of Islamabad, the Pakistan Day parade has been postponed until Thursday. Later in the afternoon, President Alvi will confer awards to people from different fields of lives for their outstanding contributions. Now, US President Joe Biden has expressed his resolve to boost partnership with Pakistan. In a letter, Biden congratulated President Arif Alvi and the nation on Pakistan Day. The US President asserted that ties with Pakistan are based on the shared goal of peace and prosperity. Biden said Washington will continue to work with Islamabad on the Afghan peace, climate change and COVID-19. Earlier, during a phone call with Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin lauded Islamabad's consistent support to the peace process. The US Secretary of Defense also expressed Washington's desire to further cooperation with Pakistan in areas of common interest. Now, the US says it will consult with its allies over troops withdrawal from Afghanistan. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the US went in Afghanistan together with NATO and will leave together when the time is right. Speaking on his first visit to NATO headquarters, Blinken said a US review of options in Afghanistan is still underway. Addressing a press conference, the Secretary pledged to rebuild and revitalize the transatlantic NATO military alliance. He said the alliance is at a pivotal moment in facing threats around the world as well as climate change. NATO foreign ministers will discuss Afghanistan over the next 2 days in Brussels. Now, in the US, 10 people, including a police officer, have been killed in a shooting at a supermarket in Boulder City of western Colorado State. Police say they have arrested the suspected gunman who got injured in the encounter. They said the motive behind the shooting is not known immediately. Police identified the slain officer as 51-year-old Eric Talley, saying he was the first to respond to the shooting. Talking to the media, Boulder Police Commander Kerry said there is no ongoing public threat.
I can share with the public today, or this evening, that there is no ongoing public threat, that we do have a person of interest in custody. That person was injured during the incident and is being treated for the injuries.
Well, the bloodshed marks the second mass shooting in the US in a week following gun violence in Atlanta that left 8 people dead. Now, moving on, China had summoned the European Union ambassador to protest against sanctions over alleged human rights abuses. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said Beijing communicated its reservations to Nicolas Chapuis. Vice Foreign Minister Qin Gang told Chapuis that EU should recognize the seriousness of its error and correct it to prevent further damage to the ties with China. Earlier, the EU announced curbs on Chinese officials in a coordinated effort with the US, UK and Canada. The move prompted Beijing to impose reciprocal sanctions on 10 European individuals and 4 entities. The curbs prohibit the incumbents from entering the mainland, Hong Kong and Macau. Also, China says no one can interfere in its internal affairs by fabricating lies. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's statement comes after a meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Guilin. The two said the international community believes the US should reflect on the damage it has done to global peace in recent years. The Chinese State Councillor said manipulation by a few Western powers does not represent the international community. During a joint press conference, Wang called for enhanced cooperation with Russia to meet global challenges. Meanwhile, Lavrov termed European and Western sanctions unacceptable. He said Russia and China believe the US is trying to destroy international legal architecture. Moving on now, Israelis are voting in the 4th general election in 2 years after the ruling coalition collapsed in December. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a tough vote, being embroiled in several corruption trials. Election officials say vote counting will likely take several days due to the coronavirus precautions and the upcoming Passover holiday. They warned the delay could be fertile ground for growing efforts to delegitimize the results. Meanwhile, the personal information of all voters was leaked by anonymous hackers a day before the elections. Now, the Israeli media said hackers published databases with 6.5 million names, addresses and ID numbers. Palestine's Fatah movement says Israel is reassuring President Mahmoud Abbas to cancel this year's elections. Fatah's Central Committee member Hussein al-Sheikh said Israel's Internal Security Services chief called for cancelling the polls. But al-Sheikh said Palestinians will move forward with the polls at any cost. Earlier, Israeli media said Tel Aviv conveyed a strong warning to Abbas over Hamas-Fatah unity in upcoming polls. Palestinians are set to elect a new legislature on 22nd of May and a president on 31st of July after a gap of 15 years. Now in Brazil, over 1,300 more people have died from coronavirus overnight, raising the death toll to over 295,000. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.7 million lives and infected more than 123 million people. WHO expert Van Kerkhove says the weekly global count of deaths from COVID-19 is rising again after about 6 weeks of decline. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has warned the US could see another avoidable surge if mitigation measures are not followed. Germany has also extended current lockdown to April 18th, entering stricter curbs over the Easter holiday period. Turkey recorded its highest daily coronavirus cases since mid-December. In Asia, South Korea's President Moon Jae-in received a shot of AstraZeneca's vaccine as the country began to accelerate its inoculation drive. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 72 more people have lost their lives to the coronavirus and more than 3,200 tested positive overnight. The Health Ministry says the countrywide death toll is now approaching 14,000. So far, over 633,000 people have been infected in the country, of which more than 585,000 people have recovered. The ministry has detected over 34,500 active cases in the country. Meanwhile, nearly 2,500 people are in critical condition across the country. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now in Myanmar, the anti-coup activists are holding fresh protests in Yangon despite the killing of 3 more people by police in Mandalay overnight. Activists say security forces have killed at least 261 people since the 1st of February military coup. Myanmar's military says it is sorry for the deaths of 164 demonstrators during the violence. At a news conference, a military spokesperson said 9 members of the security forces have also been killed. The army accused the media of provoking unrest with false reporting. The spokesperson said the military has no immediate plans to lift restrictions on the internet because violence is being provoked online. Meanwhile, the military showed video testimony of a former top Yangon official alleging corruption by ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Now in India, at least 13 more people have died after a bus and an auto rickshaw collided in Gwalior city of Madhya Pradesh state. Police say the driver lost control of the overspeeding bus and collided with the overloaded auto rickshaw. The deceased included 12 women and the driver of the auto rickshaw. 8 women and the driver died on the spot, while the others succumbed to their injuries in a hospital. Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, the death toll from a massive fire that swept through a Rohingya refugee camp has risen to 15. Officials said the fire has forced at least 50,000 people to flee the camps. Local authorities on refugees said it was the biggest fire since the influx of Rohingya in August 2017. They added some 2,000 shanties were completely gutted. It is the 3rd fire to hit the settlements in 4 days. Nearly 1 million of the persecuted Muslim minority from Myanmar live in cramped camps in the southeastern Cox's Bazar district. The international community has welcomed a new peace initiative from Saudi Arabia to end the war in Yemen. The Saudi initiative includes a nationwide ceasefire under the UN supervision and the reopening air and sea links.
Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud says, under the plan, political negotiations between the Yemeni government and the Houthis will be restarted. In a news conference, he said Riyadh will work with the international community to press the rebels to come to the negotiating table. Prince Faisal said the Saudi-led coalition will continue to face Houthi assaults with a necessary response. Yemen's internationally recognized government issued a statement welcoming the offer. British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said a nationwide ceasefire and action to ease humanitarian access restriction are essential. Welcoming Saudi offer, the U.S. State Department said all parties to the Yemen conflict should commit seriously to an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations and Pakistan also lauded Saudi Arabia's effort to end Yemeni war. But Houthis said there is nothing new in the offer. However, the group's chief negotiator said the Houthis will continue to talk with Riyadh, Muscat and Washington to try to reach a peace deal.
In Niger, the death toll from a coordinated raid on southwestern villages has risen to 137. Officials say the gunmen attacked 3 villages located near the border with Mali, shooting at everything that moved. A previous estimate by local authorities was of around 60. The government said by systematically targeting civilians, these armed bandits are reaching a new level of horror and savagery. In a statement, the government announced 3 days of national mourning, but it did not say who authorities believed was behind the attacks. Earlier, United Nations Refugee Agency said the attacks can be a revenge for the recent arrests of people suspected of having links with armed groups. Moving on, Lebanon's President and Prime Minister-designate Saad al-Hariri have failed to reach an agreement on a new cabinet. Following their meeting, Hariri said Michel Aoun wanted to dictate cabinet membership. In a televised address, Hariri said the president insisted on granting veto powers on policy to his political allies. He said the president sent a list for a cabinet of either 18, 20 or 22 ministers with names to be filled in. Hariri called Aoun's demands unacceptable, saying it is not the job of the president to form a government. Responding, Aoun said he is surprised by Prime Minister-designate's comments as his proposal had not included a blocking minority. Lebanon has been without a government since August, and the economic crisis is posing the biggest threat to its stability. Well, now Moscow says it is ready for tit-for-tat measures after Bulgaria expelled 2 Russian diplomats accusing them of espionage. The Russian embassy in Sofia said Moscow will reserve its right to retaliate. In a statement, the embassy called the expulsion groundless and unjustified. It said the démarche of Sofia will not contribute to the further construction of a constructive Russian-Bulgarian dialogue. Earlier, Bulgaria's foreign ministry said it had given Russian diplomats 72 hours to leave the country. The move followed a letter from prosecutors that said the 2 had been involved in activities incompatible with their status. Sofia has now expelled 8 Russian diplomats, including a military attaché, over suspected spying since October 2019. Now moving to Australia, where torrential rains have pummeled parts of the country, sweeping away homes, bridges and livestock. Authorities have issued fresh flood warnings and evacuation orders amid the worst flooding in decades. The Australian Weather Agency has warned that 10 million people are threatened to severe weather conditions. It has also cautioned that the situation is far from over yet, as 2 major weather systems have collided. More than 18,000 people have evacuated their homes and 22,000 more ordered to do so. Emergency services and troops have been deployed to rescue the affected. Now, a dedicated Lego collector in Vietnam has crafted entire worlds out of the small, multicolored bricks. Let's find out in this report.
Wang Dang steps into his Lego project room, filled to the brim with drawers full of tiny bricks, and slowly but surely starts to construct a Vietnamese fishing boat. Hoang says he is most inspired by scenes close to home, his childhood home, a temple in Hanoi's Old Quarter, or a 1990s Vietnamese living room during Lunar New Year.
I categorize the bricks according to their functionality. For example, there are bricks used especially to build walls, some are for details, so they are sorted by what they can build. It is tough to tell how many bricks are in those boxes, but my best guess is that this is half of the 2 million something bricks that I own. The other million are still mixed up in boxes.
Hoang said he hopes to eventually build 10 large-scale creations for an exhibition and is currently about halfway to his goal. He said it takes about 5 months to finish a 5,000-piece facade, although he admits most of that time is spent sourcing the perfect brick.
I have to admit that 95% of the time spent is to find bricks. I do have them here, I just don't know where. They are mixed up in boxes that take up a lot of time to find. I often spend a whole evening looking for just that one brick.
Despite his massive collection, Hoang said he is always on the hunt for new pieces, and that is how he made what he calls his Lego friends, including Khang Huing in Ho Chi Minh City. The pair met over a Facebook group for builders and collectors.
Now, paintings by Edvard Munch, silverware by Pablo Picasso and a Banksy canvas are among the works on offer at an upcoming Sotheby's auction.
Auction house will hold its first major sale of the year, titled Modern Renaissance, on 25th of March. The auction will span 500 years of art. Munch's Embrace on the Beach leads the lots with a price estimate of $12.5 to $16.6 million. A self-portrait of the Norwegian painter is priced at $6.2 to $8.9 million. Picasso's portrait of photographer Dora Maar is expected to fetch $8.9 to $11.7 million, while a set of silver plates by the Spanish artist has a price tag of $1.6 to $1.4 million. David Hockney's 4-meter wide landscape, Tall Dutch Trees After Hobbema, is seen fetching between $8.9 and $11.7 million. Other artworks on offer include Portrait of a Youth by 15th century painter Piero del Pollaiuolo with an estimate of $5.5 to $8.3 million. Elusive street artist Banksy's parody canvas of a 1991 Vanity Fair cover of actress Demi Moore is on sale at $2.7 to $4.1 million.
Now, European stocks are trading lower as concerns over a third wave of coronavirus infections in the region rattles investor sentiment. Italy's FTSE MIB is leading the losses, sliding over 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris and the Frankfurt stocks have also shed close to 0.5%. London's FTSE and the Pan-European Stock 600 have slipped marginally as well. Earlier, all Asian stocks also traded lower. Now, Ireland says the EU is willing to offer the UK flexibility in the trading rules governing Northern Ireland. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney said this depends on London producing a roadmap of its plans for the British region. In an interview, Coveney admitted there had been some back and forth between the two sides in recent weeks. But the Irish Foreign Minister said if the UK complies, the EU could look at flexibilities, including extensions to grace periods. Ireland has repeatedly voiced concerns regarding the adverse impact of the post-Brexit trade rules on its economy. Earlier this month, Northern Irish loyalist paramilitaries suspended support for the landmark Belfast peace agreement with Britain. In the National Basketball Association, the Utah Jazz have dominated the Chicago Bulls 95-120. Donovan Mitchell scored 30 points with 6 rebounds and 6 assists to lead Jazz to victory.
Rudy Gobert nailed a double-double for Jazz with 21 points, 10 rebounds and a career-high 9 blocked shots. In another encounter, Houston Rockets beat Toronto Raptors 117-99. Christian Wood scored 19 points while John Wall produced a triple-double as the Rockets snapped their record 20-game losing streak. Meanwhile, Los Angeles Clippers battled back from a 22-point deficit to defeat Atlanta Hawks 119-110. Luke Kennard recorded 20 points, 7 rebounds and 4 assists in 18 minutes to end Atlanta's 8-game winning streak. Elsewhere, the Memphis Grizzlies bested Boston Celtics 132-126 points. Jay Morant scored 29 points and dished out 9 assists to help Memphis edge visiting Boston in overtime.
Now in cycling, Denmark's Andres Kron has won the first stage of Volta a Catalonia race in Spain. Kron also released the overall standings after he proved the quickest of a 4-man break. Spain's Luis Leon Sanchez finished second ahead of Frenchman Remy Rochas. Peter Sagan of Slovakia and Brighton Chris Froome both struggled, finishing 8 minutes 30 seconds behind Kron. The second stage today is an 18.5 kilometre time trial in Banyoles. And now let's have a look at how the weather is doing around the world. That's all for now. For the latest update, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.